Greetings. Welcome to Conversations with Tony Mobley. On Conversations with Tony Mobley today, professional video editor Chris Fenwick is going to be with me today. Today is October 15th, 2025. This is episode 39 of 2025 of Conversations with Tony Mobley. This conversation uses the TV broadcast software Mimo Live, and also we use Zoom. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Clylock Lopez Waterman, and our team behind him is Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, and Mickey Mekachur. Thank you, sir, and thank you, team. Conversations with Tony Mobley can be seen on YouTube as well as our website at conversationwithtonymobley.com. We also have an interactive chat courtesy of Alex Lindsay. It's called Mukana. And there you can ask your questions. Those questions can be voted up and down, or you can ask your questions in the YouTube chat. We thank you for being here, and we're going to get started because we've got a lot to cover today. And my guest today would call this show The Third Rail. And we're going to ask him why we would call this show The Third Rail during our conversations. Let me say welcome to my friend, Chris Fenwick.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, sir. Glad you could be here with me today. Looking forward to this conversation. We're going to get started right away. The very first question is, who is Chris Fenwick?
Chris Fenwick is a grumpy old man who's been working in this industry for 4 decades. And I've seen a lot of changes technologically. I've seen a lot of changes in viewing habits. And it's just been super interesting to watch the television and a little bit of film industry change since, the mid 80s.
That's fantastic. And I guess we should talk a little bit about how we first met. And we met through the office hours community.
Yep.
And you were one of the people who was very instrumental in the creation of Conversation with Tony Mobley. So I thank you for that, sir. And I hope that you are proud of what we've been able to accomplish these 3.5 years.
I was telling my wife about, there was one afternoon where I think I was in my garage and we were all chatting on Zoom. And I do remember, I don't specifically remember exactly, but I do remember having a conversation with you about, going out and starting something up. So yeah, you have to be careful what you say. Sometimes people listen to you.
Well, again, we thank you so much for being here. And we're going to get right into the thick of things. But before we go any further, let's talk about what The Third Rail is.
So The Third Rail is a show that I've been wanting to produce for about 25 years. And when I first had the idea, of course, Al Gore hadn't really invented the internet yet, and there was no such thing as video streaming unless you were John Prutto. And the idea of doing it on a budget was unheard of. So I was trying to figure out a way to do it as a television show. Now it would be much easier to do, but the idea of The Third Rail is, it's slightly complex, but basically the third rail is the stuff you don't get to talk about. You don't get to talk about it. You can't talk about religion. You can't talk about politics. You can't talk about, abortion or Donald Trump or, Charlie Kirk. You can't talk about these things because it's too much of a hot button topic, right? But the idea is not to just pit people against each other, although everybody likes watching a train wreck. But what I really wanted The Third Rail to be is a discussion about a hot button topic where you then take a step back, let the left and right, pros and cons, black and white, whatever it is, let the two sides discuss, and then take a step back and say, what did they do wrong? What did they do well? Could this guy's argument been presented better to be more impactful and maybe change somebody's mind? Because I think that, like I mentioned earlier, uh, we've lost the ability to communicate. It's actually, I think that was pre-show. We've lost the ability to communicate and listen and be patient and to think critically because, social media has basically killed most of our minds. If I don't like something, I just scroll past it. I'm not forced to engage with something that's difficult. And if you're going to have a difficult conversation, you need to have a receptive audience. And by and large, audiences don't have the ability to listen to something that's more than about, 5 seconds long and slightly more complicated than, just a political meme.
Well, I think we both have chosen to participate in a third rail conversation this evening, so we will see where it goes,
Quite possibly.
and and we'll see where it goes, and we'll go from there. And so the the question that I'm looking at, you've already answered that you have been a video editor for over 40 years. So we're going to get right into. Chris gave me a little bit of homework, and so we're going to delve into that a little bit later. But right now, we're going to talk about your appearance on Netflix. And the question reads: let's talk about Amy Bradley is Missing and your role with her family and the edit in the Netflix video. And I know that's a lot, but let's talk about it.
So I'll try and glaze over what's actually covered in the documentary. But essentially, I was on that boat to do a job. I became aware that there was a missing person. I realized I had video footage of her, Amy, the night that she went missing. And I then went through my footage, found all the clips of Amy, and passed those on to a representative of the family. And this is where the documentary, this is why we're here, because we're talking about truth in media. And then that videotape went missing. It was never seen again. And the story of Amy is tragic. It has been an ongoing nightmare for the Bradley family. I consider them to be very close friends now. We talk all the time. Just minutes before we went live here, I shot off messages to the Bradleys, letting them know that we were having this conversation and surely Amy would come up. But it's interesting that a video, the Netflix show, which is called Amy Bradley is Missing, doesn't even have a call to action in it. There's no, if you have any, information on Amy, please let us know. So right there, you wonder, what their motivation is. If the idea is to find Amy, you'd think at least at the end of the show, there'd be a, here's a hotline, here's an email, here's a website, go do the thing. And yet there wasn't. So what's the point? And I think it, Iva just sent me a message, says she's watching. I think it tells you something about the motivation of the filmmakers. And I want to be clear. Ari and Phil, the producers of the documentary, they worked hard. I think they spent at least about two years on this story before you got to see it in your living room. And they do a great job. They have another show on Netflix about the Zodiac killer, which I highly recommend watching. It's quite entertaining. But I find it odd that they didn't feel that a call to action, phone number, website, whatever, email address, wouldn't have been a good idea. I think it would have been a really good idea. So good of an idea that I would debate leaving it on the screen for the entire 3 episodes. You know, so somebody can always find it. I always find it odd when you have a mother and a father, their kid goes missing. Like, don't put me on TV. I would just hold, the picture of my missing kid in front of my face when you're interviewing me on TV. This is who we're looking for, not this guy. I know where I am. I want to find my kid. Like, that seems like, the main thing, right? But Ari and Phil did a great job putting together the show, but I think that they were primarily making,
Entertainment.
Yeah. And that's not to say they didn't work really hard. They really did. They interviewed a whole lot of people, and they were, excited to reveal new things that had never been, made public before. And I get it, and I appreciate all that they did. I think they could have focused a bit more on here's where you share your information.
I'm going to ask you a video question in the midst of this. So this suggestion that you just made, why can't there be a re-edit where information could be added to it, or
there could be?
Would it be too costly? What would be the downside of doing that?
No, it's super easy. They could upload, they could overlay a phone number and a website and give it to Netflix and say, here, please play this video instead when somebody clicks on the icon. There's no reason why they can't do that. And if Netflix says there is, then they're stonewalling them. It's just a video file on a server someplace. Yes, it'll have to get distributed to servers around the globe, but it'll happen. That's the way the technology works. They could easily do that. There's been rumors that there might be like Amy Bradley 2, what else have we found out? But there's I don't know that for a fact, but it seems like there could be.
What do you think is the significant breakdown in terms of what is the disconnect from the time frame when the ship in question, and we're not going to talk about the particular cruise line, but
do you not want to say the name out loud? Do
I didn't know whether or not
doing that?
I didn't know whether or not you were comfortable with saying that.
I don't care. I went on a Royal Caribbean cruise, the only one I've ever been on, in March of 1998. And on that Royal Caribbean cruise, Amy Bradley was abducted. I will say it. I have no problem saying that.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. We have a question from Clarlock Lopez Waterman. He's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Chris, how do you keep your own biases from affecting your own understanding of truth? As I know I have biases, I struggle with this.
Talalak, I'm offended that you think I'm biased. No. I think when I started dating my wife, we had a discussion one night, and I said to her, we were trying to solve some problem, and I said, well, it's basically just a math problem. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, everything is eventually a math problem. Everything. And I'm not saying it's like 1 + 1 = 2, although it might be that simple, but it also might be like a geometry problem, like if this, then that, prove this, So when it comes to analyzing information, I think you have to be willing to be brutally honest with yourself and the stuff that's in front of you. I have on many occasions been in the middle of something where my um, my personal bias, I guess you'd say, would be to say we're going to go this direction, but the whole time I'm thinking, but what if, but what if, but what if? So you want to go this way, and I think oftentimes when my bias is to go one direction, I try to be um, hypercritical about decision facts that come up that might lead me that way instead of the other way. I just assume I'm going to be biased about something and really try to double check all the other things. I don't think news people do that. I think news people, get their talking points and they sit around the coffee machine and talk about how much they hate the president, and then they go out there and they regurgitate the same old facts over and over again. And that's how we get fed our news, because and I've said this before, but like in the era of Walter Cronkite, he may have covered a story for a half hour. You'd be lucky to have a news story that lasts a commercial break now, maybe the full 6 or 8 minutes. But then you have things get reduced down to an 8-second soundbite. We used to joke about that in the 80s and 90s, and now it's like an 8-frame meme. If you can't express an idea to somebody in 8 frames, you're not communicating, and that's not good, because some things in life are really confusing to wrap your head around.
Hmm. I want to ask you about what you just said about the media hating the president. Do you think it's this particular president, or is it an issue for all presidents?
I think that there will always be 49% of the country hates the president, and 51% of them think that president is doing okay. I think that there is an overwhelming bias, and it's shocking when people don't see it, but I think that there is an overwhelming bias in the media, that it leans very much left, to the point where they will openly tell lies and think nothing of it. Literally think nothing of it. They'll just keep saying the same thing because somebody else said it. There's a book, Tony. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. I think it's called Propaganda. And it's a book that's written by a guy looking at the idea of propaganda. And one of the things that's highlighted in the book is the way that a lot of stories get planted in the press. So the press wants to quote somebody. Who can I quote? Okay. They want to quote somebody. Well, one of the tricks that people do is they'll get a story in a small town paper, and then they'll start referring to it. Well, the so-and-so Gazette said, and then all of a sudden the Chicago Times Tribune says, and then the New York Times, and then WAPO, like they just want to refer to somebody else. So you plant the story in a small town paper, and now everybody can quote it. Or, and the worst case scenario is, well, unnamed sources close to the White House say. Why do we get to do that? Why does the press get to quote an unnamed source? You ever seen the movie All the President's Men? Half of that movie is Woodward and Bernstein trying to get 2 people to go on the record. If they're not going to go on the record, you can't report the story. Like half of the movie is them trying to get 2 people to go on the record. It's crazy. Nobody cares about that anymore. They'll literally say whatever they want.
You don't think that it's 2 sides of the same coin, though?
No, I
And
think
the
it's
example,
99% is the Democrats, and then you have like 1% is like Fox News and Alex Jones.
uh, I have a hard time reconciling that, and this is why. When, well, let's talk about my homework assignment. I hadn't planned to get there this quickly, but you asked me to take a look at the controversial um, comment about the Charlottesville, Virginia
Right.
situation, and so I did do my my homework, and so I actually watched some of the footage of the night before and the day of,
Okay. Can I
and
clarify something? When you say the night before what? The night
the
before the
night
press conference?
before the night before the actual incident
Okay.
of the car being driven through the people.
Okay.
So the night before there was they were showing, and I want to say it was Katie Couric that was doing the interview, and she was interviewing some of the local, I guess you would say, right. No, I'm sorry, left pastors, and she was interviewing some of the um, groups that were um, sharing their thoughts on Jewish people and black people. And so there was this, she was going back and forth between these two groups. And the part of the conversation that I sort of locked in on was there was a gentleman that she was interviewing, and in the clip that I saw, they never said what his name was. But he was talking about the fact that there were, um, he was talking about that there was an effort on the part of the left to erase white people from existence in this country, and that the the um, the left was so concerned with their um, issues of diversity and inclusion that they were discriminating against white people. And so for me, the conversation got to be troubling from this standpoint. He said that America should be 80% white, women should be at home and taking care of the home and nothing else, that they shouldn't have careers. And it was all of this kind of dialogue that was 1984 mindset. And
Or
I haven't,
1954.
and so I was referring to George Orwell's 1984.
Okay.
So, and then they showed the only group that they did not mention was they mentioned the neo Nazis and the KKK. They did not mention the Proud Boys, but they were showing them marching. This is the night before when the president had said in his
Press conference.
remarks, yeah, his press conference the next day, that that it was quiet, but it wasn't. They had a large number of people carrying torches, and they were saying, "We will not let the Jews replace us." That was one thing that they were saying. And then they had some interviews of some other people, not necessarily the same group, but they were, spewing a lot of negative dialogue, and I would not repeat it. And I had considered sharing it, but I don't think it's,
You didn't want
even
to
though
go
it's on
that
YouTube.
deep into the third rail?
Not that deep into the third rail. And so this is I think the thing for me, Chris. When the president says that it was quiet, when I can see that it was not quiet, that's problematic for me.
Okay, so
But let me finish
absolutely
this last
finish.
thought. And so the last thought is that when he says that there are good people on both sides, I can't argue with that. But what I was able to see is that while there were both groups that had people that were aggressive, there was one that was spewing more hatred. Now that was from the lens, and and I have a question for you later on about what media sources that you look at that you think are actually valid. But the point I'm trying to make is his statement to me was not a statement that promoted trying to heal from that particular situation. Now I'm done. Go ahead.
Well, this is interesting. You know, Tony, before the show, we were talking about Fenwick's logical fallacies. And one of those logical fallacies I said was like the lost, the what I call it, the lost lead or something like that, where somebody starts with something that's inaccurate and then builds on it. I have the transcript from the press conference, the Fine People press conference. Trump didn't say it was quiet. I mean, there's plenty of instances in it where he says it was horrible. It was an awful thing. It was violent. There was clubs. There was fighting. That's not quiet. None of that sounds like quiet to me. It wasn't quiet.
He was talking about. I'm sorry. He was talking about the night before he said it was quiet, not the day of. The day of, everything you just said, the day of, he did say that. He did say what you just said, the day of. But he initially said that the night before it was quiet and wasn't.
Right. So
that's what I was talking about.
If I may, I have a little bit of a presentation here that I've put together. Because I think that the very fine people quote it's astonishing that for 8 years now, it has been so misquoted, like horribly by, the press, by celebrities, by Obama, by Biden in the debate. Like they just rattle it off like this is just the way it is because somebody said that Trump said that Nazis are fine people. Because that's what it has distilled down to. Nazis are fine people.
I did not hear that. I did not hear him say that.
He did not say that. But I'm going to show you why people are using that quote. Okay. So what I have here is 7.5 minutes of transcript from that press conference that was about 25 minutes long. Okay. And again, I'm going to say, you and I have talked about this. These things are hard to talk about, and it takes time. So I'm going to ask for the patience to sort of step through this. And the key is, why are people saying that Donald Trump says that Nazis are fine people? Okay. Why do people say that? Okay. I see the crew trying to keep up with me. I'm going to go back to the slides here. So here's the transcript. And there's a few points here. First of all, this is the key quote. About halfway through this 7 minutes of the thing, he says, you had people that were fine people on both sides. That's the key quote that gets kind of changed because the reporter asked about the neo-Nazis. Well, the neo-Nazis started this thing. They showed up in Charlotte. And Trump is is in the middle of a conversation where nobody's listening to him. They're talking over him. He's explaining things and they're just moving on to the next thing they want to talk about, because even the reporters aren't bothering to listen to the man who they're asking the questions of. Okay, so he says you have these very fine people on both sides, right in the context of the neo-Nazis. Okay, so what ends up happening is people say, oh, well, Nazis are fine people. So in the beginning of this section, one of the reporters mentions the alt-right and then Trump, and I'd never heard this term before, and this may be the first of it showing up. He talked about, well, what about the alt-left? Okay, and what he said was that, as far as I'm concerned, it was a horrible, horrible day. So he's not saying that day was quiet. Maybe the day before. I'll give you that. I'm not familiar with exactly what you're mentioning there. Then he talked about, when Trump talked about the alt-left, he said, yeah, these people came in, they were charging, they were swinging clubs, they were very violent, what he called the alt-left. Now, were there Nazis there? Probably. Were there bad people there? Absolutely. But the alt-left, these people were coming in, and he made the distinction, which I thought was very interesting. He said, there are ways that you protest, and in many communities, you need to apply for a permit to protest, which makes sense, because that way, people can plan their commutes and they're not going to get shut down on the highway or whatever. So they planned the people who were trying to defend, the history and the heritage of the South, and these statues that were getting taken down. They had a peaceful protest planned. They applied for the permit, and they started their protest. But then this alt-left contingency came in and interrupted. The people on the left, they didn't have a permit. The other people had the permit. So I'm going to keep going forward here. Over here, so concerning the permit, the right had applied for the permit, and the left did not. Now I added another thing here. So when people say, well, should the Nazis have the right to peace, to protest, he points out, he says, when they applied for the protest, they didn't say, oh, and by the way, we're a bunch of neo-Nazi, scumbags and we want to protest. It was just, hey, we're here to, protect these old statues. And then that protest was co-opted by the Proud Boys and the neo-Nazis and blah, 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 and all the rest. And Trump has on so many occasions been asked, why can't you just condemn these people? And here in this sentence right here, I've condemned many groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. He was absolutely condemning these people. And then he says here, they didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis, and you had some bad people in that group. So he's clearly saying that these are not good people. He's not saying that the neo-Nazis are fine people by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, and the press has treated all of them unfairly. Basically, he's defending the peaceful protesters. He's not defending the Nazis. He's not defending the Proud Boys. He's not defending the alt-left, the people that were crashing the peaceful protest. The press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group, also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers there too. And you see them come back with the black outfits and the helmets and the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in that group. So this is the breakdown. This is a white screen on purpose. This is essentially what he said at that press conference. He says, you got two groups of people. You got the left and you got the right. In the left, there were what he called the alt-left. There were the people that were swinging the clubs and stuff. And in the right, you have some neo-Nazis and other bad people. When Trump said there were fine people on both sides, he was talking about these people. He didn't call the Nazis, and he went out of his way clarifying it to a bunch of reporters that weren't listening to him until they found something that they could twist into a soundbite for 8 years. He wasn't calling Nazis fine people. He wasn't calling the alt-left fine people. He was saying that in the two halves, you got good people on both sides. There's nut jobs and horrible people on both sides too. But you can't lump them all together, which is what the press was doing. Trump was defending the people that are good people. They're historic people that want to keep their statues. And I don't even care one way or the other. Well, I do care, but that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The statue thing should probably be figured out at a city level, county level. I don't know how to do that. I don't have that answer. But what astonishes me is how many people have, for the last 8 years, said that Trump says Nazis are fine people based on that soundbite, buried in multiple examples where he's clarifying again to a press that wasn't listening to him. And you could tell when you listen to the sound bite of that, you realize, by the way, the text that I grabbed there, that was a supplied text that I went through and listened to. I read along while I was listening to the soundbite, and I even made a few, as I recall, I made a few little changes. I'm not making up words here. This is from the video file. But people just don't listen. They don't listen. They don't care. They don't want to know. Even Barack Obama and Joe Biden stood on stage during the 2024 primaries and election saying, why would we elect this guy who thinks Nazis are fine people? No repercussions. They can say whatever they want, and nobody calls them on it.
Well, I'm going to say that I hear you. I hear you. I see what you have shared in terms of your diagram, and I will say that this is going to be a point of disagreement between us, because in everything that I've seen, I agree that there I'm sure were people that were outfitted in tactical gear, but part of the reason.
Let me get this straight. You're saying that you disagree with me. So you think the Nazis are fine people? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Because you're disagreeing with. You said you were disagreeing with me.
What I want to say is that I don't think that the way in which that particular situation was presented, I understand why there are people who think that he was saying that Nazis are good people.
Because they're stupid and can't parse a sentence.
Well, this is my reasoning for it.
Okay.
So when you look at that situation, it looks as if those who were wearing the tactical gear were those who presented themselves as neo-Nazis. And because they seemed to be the aggressor initially when things first got started, that would be the reason that some people would conclude that he was saying that the neo-Nazis were fine people. I'm not saying that I am not saying that you are wrong, but I'm saying that I can see why people would draw that conclusion.
But you're basically giving people based on what I'm hearing you say, you're giving people, You're allowing them to be stupid and not actually listen to what the man said. You're okay with the fact that they're misunderstanding it because clearly they're not smart enough to hear when he says, I condemn these people. These are horrible people. I'll go read the exact words if you want. But at no point did he say that the neo-Nazis were good people, and at no point did he defend them. He condemned them entirely.
No, you're right. He did not. What he said was that there were good people on both sides. That is what he said. And what I'm saying to you, you may call people stupid who don't see it the way that you see it.
No, it has nothing to do with perception. It has everything to do with the actual ability to not understand a sentence. Like, if you really think that's true and you've heard the sentence. Now, the problem is, I don't think everybody's stupid. Actually, that's not true. I think most people are stupid, but that's besides the point. But the real issue, Tony, is that most people have never heard the rest of this. And we're talking about truth in media. Most people have never bothered to go to the source material, to actually look at the transcript and watch the video and do what I did, where I copied and pasted and laid it all out and circled it and highlighted it. And people aren't going to do that. I'm a weird, sick, twisted individual. People aren't going to do what I did. So the real issue is nobody gets to hear the real message because, again, truth in media, the media is not telling the rest of the story because they want everybody to think that Donald Trump thinks that Nazis are fine people. That's what they want people to walk away with, so they don't bother playing the rest of the clip. Most people, I don't think everybody's stupid, but the people who do know that this exists and don't share it, they're completely corrupt. Completely corrupt. And if there was such a thing as a license to tell the news, it should be revoked because they're not doing their job. And that goes along with Barack Obama and Joe Biden quoting this very publicly during the election period. They did that on purpose. Those guys don't get on stage and rattle off, random words. Somebody wrote that. They decided, should we do the fine people quote? Yeah, do the fine people quote. They chose to do that. They chose to avoid the truth. And nobody talks about that, except for right here on the Conversation with Tony and Mobley show, otherwise known as Third Rail Light.
Again, I can see you are right when you say that he did not specifically say that neo-Nazis were good people. That is a fact. He did not say that. Now,
right here, I'm not talking about the right here. I am not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. Why does that not get shared? That's a real question. But instead, you have people saying, Donald Trump says Nazis are fine people. That they want to tell. He clearly says they should be condemned totally. Right?
I really want to stay here for some time, Chris, for us to continue to talk about this. But Laura Thompson has asked a question, so we're going to answer her question.
I understand. Tony, first of all, I just want to say you have given this topic more time than anybody else I've ever seen. So thank you for having the patience to listen.
All right. Laura Thompson asks, thinking about the power of a free media, is there any reason for people like whistleblowers identified to be protected for the greater good? What do you think?
Could you say that again? I don't think I got the gist of the question.
Thinking about the power of a free media, is there any reason for people like whistleblowers' identity to be protected for the greater good?
So I think whistleblowers are unique because they are people that want to go against the system. They're like, I'm seeing stuff that's not true. And for whatever reason, whether it's political, do you remember Seth Rich? Do you remember that name?
No, I don't know that name.
Seth Rich was the ultimate whistleblower, I think. Seth Rich worked for the Democratic office, DNC, and the digital analysis that I have heard of, I'm not smart enough to actually do the digital analysis, but that I have heard of, says that the leak, the leak of the hacking of the DNC servers had nothing to do with an outside entity reaching in and pulling massive amounts of data. Because if you look at the amount of data and the amount of time that it was copied, allegedly, I could be totally wrong, that it's faster than you could pull over the internet connections that they had at the DNC. The data was taken locally. The data was almost certainly taken by Seth Rich, who was a DNC staffer who decided he wanted to blow the whistle because he was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he didn't like the way that Bernie Sanders got swept under the rug and Hillary Clinton had been promoted to run against Donald Trump in 2016. Seth Rich lost his life because reasons, I mean, that they weren't going to have this. And a lot of salacious details came out during all of that. But should whistleblowers be protected? I think whistleblowers should be given, I think they should be given the same privileges as witness protection. I think they should be. I think when it's a matter of national security or national interest, I think they should be given a new life and a new identity and a new house to live in and a new job. I think we need to take those type of people, and I could be totally wrong about this. I haven't given it a whole lot of thought, Laura, but I think we need to realize that these people are not just, I mean, we've all watched, a movie about the jails, criminals in jail, and you don't want to be a snitch. You'll get killed. You'll get shivved in the shower or whatever. People are potentially risking their lives. Seth Rich did. And seriously, people, if you don't know the story of Seth Rich, go read about it. It's horrible. It's a horrible story. And it shouldn't be the type of thing that somebody goes, oh, I've never heard that name. You should know that name.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to say to Laura, I agree with what Chris just said in terms of witness protection, definitely for whistleblowers. And while I'm speaking about Laura's question, those of you who are watching and listening, if you have other questions, this is a unique opportunity to have a conversation with Chris Fenwick. So please ask your questions. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but please get your questions in. And so the next question is, why is it important for people to know about truth in the media?
I think well, to know, I don't fully understand the question, but there has to be some sort of North Star. There has to be, something that you can trust. You had said earlier, Tony, you said you were interested in what I thought was worth listening to. I stopped watching television news 15 years ago. It's all trash. It's all garbage. Instead, if I want to know what's going on in the world, if I want to know what is happening in politics, there is one podcast that I listen to, and it is a couple of guys that they have no advertising, so they can't be corrupted by money. And all they do is they look at the news, and they call it deconstructing the news. And so they look at story X on CBS and they compare it to CNBC and Fox and ABC, and they tear it apart. They'll even go so far as to look at like what time a story was posted, and they'll go, okay, look at this. Here we got 5 stories. They're all posted within minutes of each other, and they all share the exact same language. Where is that sentence coming from? Remember when they were trying to defend Joe Biden, and literally every news agency came out and said, he's sharp as a tack. He's sharp as a tack. Go look at how many news agencies described Joe Biden as sharp as a tack. Who still uses that phrase? Unless you're as old as you and I. Sharp as a tack. And all of those stories were posted like at the same time. So what they do on this podcast is they deconstruct the news, and they look at, who's behind what. And they don't necessarily tell you what's right or wrong. They will share their opinion, but they let you see it at a level that the average news viewer doesn't have the ability to break down. And that's where I get my news from, is that podcast.
And what's the name of it again?
It's called the No Agenda Show.
No Agenda Show.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's all they do. They look at the news and they tear it apart. They've been doing it for about 18 years, I think.
We have another question from Clylock Lopez Waterman, Raleigh, North Carolina. Chris, you are a very persuasive person. How do you make sure you are not convincing people just like the media?
Most people don't listen to me, Clylock. I want to tell you a story which I think is important. Tony, if you and I were to play a word association game, I'm going to say a word. You're going to say the first word that comes to mind. Okay. So let's play the game together. So I say cat, you say
dog.
Okay. I say black, you say
white.
Okay. So that's simple word association. If we take it one step further, I'm going to say 2 words, and you say the next word that comes to mind. Okay. So we're talking about truth in media. Think about education. Okay. So the first 2 words are reading, writing,
arithmetic.
There you go. Perfect. So that's the natural progression. I have a brother who lives in France. His children, born and raised outside of Paris, are wicked smart kids. They're amazing, amazing kids. I say kids, they're all, adults and have their own kids now. But I was sitting with my niece. At the time, my niece was 24 years old. She was a lawyer on 2 continents. She had gone to Cambridge, became a lawyer. She went to Berkeley, she became a lawyer. She was a lawyer on 2 continents, 24 years old. And I said to her, hey, Naomi, let's play this game, reading, writing, arithmetic. And then I said, vocabulary, logic, blank. So I'll say the same. Reason, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty good. Tony, I gotta tell you, you are in like the top 1 percentile. I've done this with many, many people. Most people just look at me blank and they have no idea. Reason is not the exact answer, but it's pretty close. The natural third word would be rhetoric. And when I said this to my niece, she looked at me, rolling her eyes like I was stupid, and said, duh, rhetoric. Because in a classic liberal arts education, people were taught 6 things. They were taught how to read and write and do a little bit of math. They were taught what words meant. They were taught logic, and they were taught rhetoric. And rhetoric was the ability to influence people. In 2016, when everybody talked about Donald Trump and his evil rhetoric kind of became a bad word. But it's not. It's just, do you have the ability to influence people? A preacher is good at rhetoric. He's going to use his words. He's going to lay out a sermon. He's going to influence you. You might tug on your heartstrings a little bit, but his purpose is to, they're doing something weird on program there. The purpose is to change your mind about something. So I take the idea of rhetoric, I take the idea of affecting people's minds very seriously. I've given it a whole lot of thought. And I think that it's important to, find an audience that's interested. I think, I know my wife would tell you, I open up my mouth too much sometimes, but if she had any idea how often I'm being reserved, she might be shocked. But to Lalik's question, I think it's okay to influence people. You should encourage people to form their own opinions, but if I have the ability to change your mind about something, and I think that it's the right way to go, I will take that opportunity if I can.
I guess I want to respond to that by saying part of the reason that Conversation with Tony Mobley exists is because there is a desire on my part for people to have authentic conversation. And if I were to think about the things that are wrong with us, I don't think that we necessarily have to agree on everything, but I do think it's important for us to have conversations. And so if I were to say that there are many things I think that are going wrong with us right now, but one thing for sure is that we do not talk to each other. And I say that because until people are able to have this conversation, because there are some things that we are just not going to agree with tonight, and that's okay. But the fact that we are able to have a conversation about it, I think is important. And we have a comment, not a question, from Tamara Pika. I appreciate the work Fenwick has done to get the base of this quote. I think it's other actions outside of what has been said one time through, because what said changes so quickly on both sides. The actions of the president, who went on to pardon some of the bad people, make it easy for people to erroneously believe a misquote. I would say also, just sort of adding on to Tamara's comment, that I know that you are that you are mourning Charlie Kirk's passing. Um, but I will say that what concerns me is that the president did not really sort of say anything about the mourning the congressman and her husband who were killed. And I think that kind of thing, the inconsistency is kind of problematic about it. Um, Charlie Kirk was not a congressman, but he wanted the flags to fly half staff. Um, a congressman and her husband are killed, and there is no flags at half staff. So when you see those kinds of inconsistencies, it it undergirds what you would call, the opposition to think, you know, they to think that he is not consistent. And I'll kind of leave it at that. Do you want to respond to Tamara's comment?
Uh, the there are plenty of. I'll respond like this, and Tamara, I don't know if this will satisfy your curiosity. The only thing I wanted to point out, truth in media, is things are misquoted at a rabid level. That's all I was pointing out. The actions behind it, Tony, you discussed many of the, even down to the individuals from Charlottesville. I wasn't talking about that at all. I'm not defending anything that happened. I'm not excusing anything that happened. I'm not putting Charlie Kirk above. And what was the congressman's name?
I can't think of her name right now.
There's your point. That's your point, Tony. But see, that's the point. And I'm not saying they weren't great people. They were probably wonderful people, and I'm sure their grandchildren miss them horribly. Charlie Kirk apparently affected more people than that congressman whose name we can't remember.
I would disagree with that.
That's all I'm going to say. We can't even remember that person's name.
Part of the reason that we can't remember the name was because we were bombarded with Charlie Kirk's name. We were not bombarded with the congressman and her husband. Now,
I think it might be because Charlie Kirk affected way more people. That was
something that I would not, if I knew that I was going to mention her and her husband, I probably would have been able to recall her name.
Well, yeah, you really looked it up. I'm sure we could all Google it. That's why we have Google.
But the difference is that you talk about truth in media. Well, there is a whole big event of his memorial. I'm sorry. Okay. I've been told it's time to wrap.
Are we getting the hook?
Boy.
What's wrong, crew? Do we have to meet the network satellite time? We can't go a couple minutes over? No, I know. Everybody, I want to point out all these people volunteer. They have responsibilities and family to get to.
Have lives.
And I want to thank everybody that gets involved in what you're doing here.
Yeah. So having said that, then we may have to have another episode of The Third Rail very soon on Conversation with Tony Mobley. The last question is, you are speaking to the world. What do you want the world to know?
Pay attention. Pay attention. Ask questions. You need to start paying attention. The world is a lot more complicated than Real Housewives of Atlanta. Stop watching your television. Most of it's crap. It's absolute crap. Ask the questions and get to the bottom of things. Go to the original source material. Stop reading memes. Figure it out.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you. We want to thank everyone so much for viewing this on YouTube and on watching this on our website, conversationwithtonymobley.com. Conversation with Tony Mobley is produced by Clark Lopez Waterman, and our current team is Laura Thompson, Zachary Sorensen, Mickey McAture. Thank you, sir, and thank you, team. Thank you, Mimo Live, and thank you, Zoom, for this broadcast being made possible. Stay tuned for new episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley. Thank you for the near 200 plus episodes of Conversation with Tony Mobley. If you have time, we ask that you go back and look at some of those past conversations. We think that you will find something that you like and hopefully is very helpful. Conversation with Tony Mobley. I'd like to thank Chris Fenwick for being a part of our conversation today, for doing the work you do, and for being the person who you are. Next week, artist, illustrator, and storyteller Tamika Grooms will be with us. She has a lot to share with us, so we're looking forward to that conversation next week. Please feel free to support Conversation with Tony Mobley by volunteering and donating. We want to keep Conversation with Tony Mobley running. Please, you can donate to Conversation with Tony Mobley on our website. And we want to say thank you, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Chris. Thank your family for sharing you with us this evening. And we're going to say good night. God bless. See you all soon. Please like and subscribe to Conversations with Tony Mobley. Take care. God bless you. Bye-bye.